and they end up catching a net full of fish. The story gives us a number, and you wonder did they actually sit there and count the fish, but at that time they thought that there were 137 different species of fish, and in this representing the sharing of this number, it was a way of saying that in the catch they caught an inclusive kind. And they opened up the door, that they just didn't catch one kind of thing. Once again, reminding Jesus of the inclusivity that Jesus kept teaching along the way, that one in every kind. It would be a hard lesson for Donald Trump to hear today, believing that we only need to have a few kind of folk here, that the kind of diversity that makes up what is the community that Jesus wants us to see is not a part of that. And so by the time they do that, then they recognize John, the disciple that loved him, recognized the voice, recognized what was going on, and say, that's Jesus. And Peter said, oh, Lord, that's Jesus. And so he put some clothes back on, put his swimming trunks back on, I guess, and decided he's just going to swim and get to Jesus. And so there he goes. And then when he gets there, he gets some fish and decides to cook them breakfast so that we could sit down. That is, I want us to remember for us, that when we're going through some stuff and things don't look like, and things have not worked out the way that we want to be, the thing that helps us to get back to that point of healing, that thing that helps us to get to the place of where we can realize where the mistakes we've made, are things that come in the context of community. He invites them all to come for breakfast. I don't know where he got the Crisco from. I don't know where he got the cornmeal for battering up the fish or whatever, or where he even got the bread for. But he brought them back and he invited them as a community to come and to once again be reminded of how important it is for all of us, and particularly when we have messed up, to come back to the community, because it's in community that we receive forgiveness. It's in community that reminds us that sometimes in the things when we mess up, sometimes we think we're the only one that messed up. That everybody else got it, and I made it, and that there's something wrong with me. That yes, we highlight and we signal out all of the things that Peter did, and how Peter denied him and all of those things, but guess what? It was all the rest of them too. Wasn't nobody out looking for Jesus. That's been the thing. Whenever I look at the Jesus story and we get to this part, Janet, I always wonder, where the hell was Jesus all them days? Who did he stay with? Who did he hang out with? I mean, did he go and get him a drink and smoke him a cigar somewhere? Where was Jesus in all of that? But when he did show up, he always showed up in the midst of community. There's no place where we see a conversation where he came and he pulled one person out and say, you all right, the rest of them. But it's always in the context of community. That's why, for me, it's always important. Even when Janet was saying, you can take a break away. Yeah, I can probably take a break away from some other things, but I can't take a break away from my community. Because this is where I get my strength from. This is where I get to remember of how God has responded and how God has touched our lives through some very difficult and challenging times when we may have thought that we had let Jesus down and that Jesus would not forgive us in the midst of it. Everybody here, maybe with the exception of Carissa, but everybody here came at a time when they needed Jesus in their lives and needed to be right. You knew Jesus, but you needed to be reminded that Jesus had a purpose for you. So he goes on, they eat. And then after they finish eating, then I think they get to what was the purpose for that breakfast and that gathering. And that was to ask Peter some questions. Peter, of whom I'm sure the whole time during breakfast, Peter, who normally liked to run off in the mouth, Peter did not say a single word. It wasn't until Jesus started questioning him that Peter didn't come up and say, Jesus, look, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for how I acted. I know I let you. He doesn't do any of those things. But it says that Jesus asked Peter. He said, Peter, do you love me? And the word that Peter and that Jesus was used would have been agape. Do you have this deep love for me, Peter? This love that will carry us through the difficult times and through the challenges. Do you love me that way, Peter? And Peter responds not with agape love, but he responds with a word that the love word that he responded with is philo. It's kind of like, you know, you my homeboy. You know, I love you. I love hanging out with you. I love doing things. But it was just kind of a, you know, I cherish you kind of love. And Jesus asked him again, you know, do you love me? And once again, it's agape love. And, you know, so if you really love me, there's some things you ought to do. But he asked him a third time. And we all conclude that he asked him for the third time because it was 3 times that before his crucifixion that they asked him, did he know Jesus? And it was 3 times that he had denied him. And so you denied him 3 times, and he wanted to give him an opportunity in each one of the cases to admit and to ask for forgiveness, but he doesn't do that. But Jesus in his action, he asked him a third time. And this time when he asked him, do he love him? He in fact uses the same word that Peter had been using. Well then, if you're not devoted to me, if your love for me is not a deep love, do you love me like you say you love me? Do you love me enough to at least just to like to be around me? And Peter gets frustrated. And I am, you know, there are people that say he gets frustrated but because he believes, because he goes on, he said, well, you know everything about me. You know, you don't have to do this. That's it. But I believe he had to do this, and sometimes this I think it becomes the hardest part of the church. And I know this is on film. And I don't care if it is on film, because now I'm old. I can say what I want to. But that last one is the reason this church is not full. Because I have looked at this church, and particularly when you get at this point in the journey, and some people were asking, I was having a conversation, and they were asking about certain things. I said, the reason we are not full is for the same reason that Peter got frustrated on the last question. It's because Jesus gave him 3 times. And in the times that each one of he's asking the question and responding, Peter had to realize what Jesus had done for him. That Peter claimed Peter. He gave Peter all of the opportunities to go to the mountaintop. Even when he first met him, and he was worried, he took home and went home and healed his mother-in-law. That whenever Peter wanted to have an experience, he took Peter to the mountaintop. When Peter would spouse out and say, he even got to the place and said to Peter, Peter, I'm going to build my church on you because I have confidence in you. And then here it is, Peter messes up. And Peter can't even go and say to Jesus, forgive me. And we're not fooled because when we look at the ministry of this place and how much we did for folk when they were in the midst of the darkest times in their lives, when folks were struggling with addiction, when folk were struggling with relationship, when they were dealing with issues of homelessness, when they had lost their purpose, even when they had lost their jobs and they could not find a way. When people were going through abuses in life, dealing with the uncertainty, when they were having trouble wondering or not if the marriage was going to stay together and what happened. This was a place that held them together and reminded them that yes, there's a God who loves you. There's a God who is providing for you. And God has put you in a community of where healing and wholeness can come. And then they got healness and wholeness. And then they got thinking, well, I did this on myself. I don't. And I won't have to tell you, some of the times that has been the most bitter disappointment is that then when they left, and nobody just ran away, most of them just kind of snuck away. They just slowly kind of, well, don't come this Sunday. I won't come the next Sunday. And then the next thing, then a door is open for them. And they don't want to go back through these doors and be reminded of how far they've come, of how they have a different image now. And maybe if Peter had caught all those fish before Jesus there, maybe he never even would have come to the breakfast. Because he would have gone and made some new friends now. And they would have been talking about, and you know what, whenever you make new friends, you don't tell new friends about the old you used to be. You think, oh, you always been holy and been able to quote a few scripture verses out of context. But Jesus in that moment knew that while Peter had publicly denied him, Peter had to publicly admit that he had done wrong. And Jesus gave him another chance. Another chance. And so, with that another chance that we are given, there are some things that I think are important for us to do. And I want to make sure I covered all of them, so I wrote them all down. And there's particular things that we have to do in the community, and maybe in the past when people walked away. And I'm not talking about you all. In this case, I'm talking about me. And there have been a lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment. And the first thing I said, Kathy, I wasn't going to call any names. Because a part of not calling the names is every week as I go through my prayers, I pray for the people who walked away from this place, that I would have the grace to open up and allow them to come back in. One of the things that I've noticed out of the consistency of the people who walked away, 99% of them, John, blame me. And I can deal with that. Because you got to have somebody, you got to make somebody the bad guy, and they have made me the bad guy. And as I say, I want where I can accept that. Because I particularly notice it on Facebook. None of them friend me, but they friend all of you all. And they celebrate all y'all's celebrations. They celebrate all y'all's birthdays. All the things they all up on y'all's pages. They don't even go to my page. Most of them have unfriended me, and put me on the block, so that it's wrong. I'm gonna share one that has disappointed me the most. Well, now, I'm going to share one that has disappointed, not necessarily disappointed me, but one I can share, because this one I don't ever expect to come back. And that's Greg. He was messed up. And he was all going to take his life and do all this stuff, and would go and sit. I remember sitting with Greg at Chili's, because that used to be my office. So if you wanted to meet me in my office, that's where we had to go. We had to go to Chili's. And I remember sitting at the bar and talking with him and trying to help him get through all the stuff he's going through. Try to help him to see how his family had always been there for him and willing to do something. And all the stuff, holding him together and crying with him and doing all the stuff. And then he stopped coming and kind of slipping away. And then the next thing I see on Facebook, he talking about how some white woman done got him through. And now he embarrassed about coming back to the place. That hurt. Because it was nothing that I know I did. And nothing that anybody in this community did. And Jesus wanted to make sure that even in the midst of failure, you still try to do what you try to do. Now I say I use his name because I don't think I don't think he'll come back. But even if he did come back, I believe in the power of love. So, I'm going to give you these things real quick and then I'll let you go. When we find people who have messed up and have wandered away, and we have an opportunity to re-engage them, one of the first things that we have to do is that we have to practice active listening. Too often, when there's been a disappointment or a disagreement when we come, we want to first of all start telling people how they made us feel. But the first thing we need to do is start with active listening. Because when a person comes back, it's generally they have not come back to say, thank you for what you've done, I've moved on, do all that kind of stuff. Most of the time they come back because they're broken again. And they want to pick up where you were taking care of them. You gotta listen to them before you start sharing advice. Because you need to make sure that you are addressing what they need to address. And so when a person comes back in, or I re-engage people, first thing I do is say, tell me what's on your mind. Why are you here? Rather than me jumping in and probably, how dare you bring your ass back up? You know?
All right.
You have to be listening. You have to hear what's going on. Then after you have listened, then you must speak with love and grace. That whenever I encounter people of whom may have hurt me in walking away from the community, when I do re-engage them, I go back to the place of where I can find love. And that I can speak something in love. That I can go back beyond, because I remember all of the times when Jesus spoke to me words of love, when I needed words of really being chastised for what I've done. But when we respond to it, we respond to the place of love, rather than getting to being like Donald Trump and just respond with a lie. Then after that takes place, then I think it's important for us to be people who offer encouragement. This has been one that has been and has taken the longest for me. And that is to get to the place where after I've heard what a person has said and after I've spoken a word, that then I can somehow believe and encourage that we can move forward. That I can let go of some stuff, that they can let go of some stuff, that I can offer those words of encouragement. It's interesting that BJ is here. Much of my experience with BJ and my love for BJ was just showing up at stuff he was doing just to encourage him. I didn't have any advice. I couldn't help him learn how to throw the shot put or jump over the high jump. But I could be there I could yell. I could keep Luana from going down and beating up the coach. I mean, I could be a force of encouragement. Then the other thing that we have to do is that after the encouragement part, we have to develop a sense of empathy where we can put ourselves in their place. Beyond just being sympathetic to what they're going through. We're trying to understand and trying to see it from their perspective and trying to understand how they made the mistakes they made. And that when we go and when we develop a sense of empathy, then it does also bring us at a point of where then we have to accept some of our responsibility of how they may have made the decisions that they made. That I don't want to leave out of this of somehow thinking that everybody that walked away, they were wrong and that I was right. And sometimes I was the one who was wrong. But where I look at where we made a mistake, and that's why I have us read the covenant, is that we say we won't walk out. That if we walk out and we cut off the communication and I don't ever begin to look at things from your perspective, we will never come back together again. And when we don't come back, there's always a part of us that becomes broken. Then the other thing, that once we develop that sense of empathy with them, then we have to be willing to forgive. Forgiving doesn't mean I forget. But forgiveness means I want to move forward. Of how we can get beyond what held us back to what can move us forward. That's what Jesus was doing with Peter. You can get stuck here, Peter, but we've got to move forward. And we move forward with forgiveness. Then the last two I want to share with you is that then we have to practice gratitude. There is nothing that does my spirit good, Benita, than when there has been a breakup and then there's been makeup and you can still be gracious to the other people and give thanks that you've been given another chance. And it demonstrates to the world. If there's anything I think needs to happen currently in our political thing, is that we need to sit down and instead of continuing to try to perpetrate lies, we got to deal with the truth and to be glad that we can get to a place where we can share the truth with each other. That's not only in our personal lives, but from a national perspective, is that we have to practice gratitude and to give thanks that we are back together and that we are committed to trying to work some things out. And then the last one, and this may be the hardest one of all, is that we still have to be generous. Without forgiveness, generous with our loving. Too often we want to come back and we want to prove, and we want me to prove that you were worthy of me forgiving you before you start doing something. But being generous means that I give thanks that I've been given another chance. And then when I see what enabled me to get to that place that I could come and accept that, that doesn't mean I go back to the old habits. And I know we don't like to use, and I don't use in the term of in this place, and whenever I have any meetings with any church folk, they always say that's been my biggest ministerial failure, is that I don't deal with the money aspect of it. But the example for this, I'll use money because that's something we can all relate to. Somebody leaves, they leave because their lives were bad, they got fixed up, got a break. Now they got a break. They end up getting a better job. They end up getting a family, and they're doing all kind of things. Things got great. And now they want to come back and show how great things are. And so they come back. We've had a few of those along the way. They come back. But when they come back, they want to act like they acted before they left. You come in, tell me all how great your life is and going through. Oh, I'm glad y'all sent me through. When I came, I was an addict. Now I'm not an addict. Now I'm managing this and I'm managing that. I'm doing this and all this. And yeah, I got, you go out there and look at my brand new car and all that. And then the collection plate come by. They put in the same $2 they put in before. I always tell my William Wood story around this time. At one time, we were trying to get leadership together. And I said, I want to nominate William Woods to be our treasurer, our financial secretary, our advisor. Everybody looked at me real quick. Oh, William, why are you looking at William? Yeah. I said, because William says he tithes. And I'm not going to call him a liar. I'm going to say he is a tither. And since he is a tither, he ought to be investing our money. Because he says he's a tither and he gives $25 a week, which is $250 a week, which is $1,000 a month. I want to know how you pay a note on a BMW and a $50,000 Harley Davidson motorcycle when you're making $250 a week. So if he can do that for himself, I know he ought to do that for the Lord. He knew it was a lie. And I knew it was a lie. But I still extended him grace. He didn't want the grace. He wanted to be a big shot without accepting the responsibilities of being a big shot. I want us to be a church that practices all of these things. But more importantly than for us to be a church, I want individually for us to be that. Because all of us in here will never know when we might need another chance in our lives or when we may need to extend another chance. That moment changed Peter around. And Jesus says, guess what? In changing it around, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to turn out the way you want it to turn out. Because he ended up having to go through the same thing Jesus went through. But because of his witness and because of what happened that day and the power of another chance, that's why we're here today, and that we can be Easter people who practice the other chances in our lives. So, Janet, I'm sorry I went a little longer, but I wanted you to know that I give thanks for each of you who each week come and make yourself present as a sign that another chance does work. Amen.